Okay, I wanted to do at least one like 21 or 22. They're like 19 and 20 because it says solve the triangle. The only difference is this one and this one, you don't have an angle to start with. So that's going to be the first thing you find. If you don't have any angles, that's the first thing you find, is find one of the angles that's not, by any angles I mean, yes, we have a right angle, but I mean either of the two acute angles you need to have. So if we don't have either one, that's what we're going to start with. I'm going to start with that angle that has a question mark. That angle has two sides. Here's the two sides. One of them is the hypotenuse. The other one is the adjacent. So now I know which side's hypotenuse and which side's adjacent, and this one right here is opposite. So I'm working with the opposite and the adjacent. That's the tangent. So tan of my angle, which I don't know, so I'm going to call it x. This is a lot like 13 through 18, equals opposite over adjacent. Now remember, if we don't know the angle, we have to do the inverse to get x alone. So this is going to come over here as an inverse tan. So x equals inverse tan of 31 divided by 38. Excuse me. So in my calculator, I do second tan to get the inverse tan, and then 31 divided by 38, or you can use a fraction button. It's the same thing. A fraction means division. I get 39.2. With angles, we always round to the nearest whole number, so that would be 39 degrees. So this angle right here is 39 degrees. Since I'm working with angles right now, this angle down here is 39 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and find the other angle. I do it the same way I did this one up here last. Okay, and that is, if I know that this is 90, then these two have to add up to 90. So 90 minus 39 gives me 51. So now I know all three angles, and I know 2 out of 3 sides. The only thing I'm missing is one of the 3 sides. Remember that if you have a right triangle and you know 2 out of 3 sides, we have a formula called the Pythagorean Theorem. Pythagorean Theorem says we can go 31 squared plus 38 squared equals, I think I'll call it h for hypotenuse. Leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. Make sure you put the hypotenuse on the side by itself. So 31 squared is 961. 961 plus, this is 1,444. And when you add those together, you get 2405. Remember, the last thing you always do in the Pythagorean theorem is take the square root. So square root of 2405, and I get 49.04. So 49 is my missing side length, and that's the hypotenuse. So now I know all 3 angles, 90, 39, and 51 degrees. And I know all 3 sides, 31, 38, and 49. So now my triangle is solved. Okay, do the same thing with number 21. Start out by finding this missing angle. You're going to use tangent to do that. And then subtract from 90 to find the other angle. And then use Pythagorean theorem to find the missing side. Now, let's talk about this last page. Okay, these two up top, they're basically like 2 triangles melded together. It says find the area of each triangle. Okay, that means the whole big triangle. To find the area of a whole big triangle, you use the area formula, 1/2 base times height. Okay, 1/2 base times height for, let's look at number 24, means 1/2 of this whole distance all the way across here times this distance right here. That's my height. I'm going to go ahead and call it h for height. The 16 is only from here to here. It does not include this part over here. So in order to do 1/2 the whole base times the height, I've got 2 things I have to find. I need to find this part over here, which I'm going to call it x, from here to here. And I need to find the height. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this as two different triangles, two mini triangles, and I'm going to take it one at a time. The first one I'm going to use this one over here, just because I have more information about it to begin with. This one on the left, I only know that it has a right angle and another angle. I don't know any side lengths. This one over here, I know an angle other than the right angle, and I know a side length. Okay, so I'm going to find H. So first I have to look at it from 39 degrees and figure out which sides I'm working with. Here's the two sides of the 39-degree angle. One of them is the hypotenuse. The other is the 16. That's the adjacent. So the H is the opposite. So I need to find the opposite, and I have the adjacent, so I'm going to use tangent, because tangent is opposite and adjacent. So tan 39 equals opposite over adjacent. I'm not even going to worry about that other triangle at all yet. Okay, cross multiply. This is what I get. 16 times tan 39. 12.95. That's about 13.0 when we round. So my height is 13. Now I can use this triangle on the other side. Sorry, I keep moving it over too far. Just focus on this triangle over here and find the X part. So now I've got a triangle. Let me just draw this triangle separately. 60, 13, and X is what I've got here. Okay, it's actually a 30, 60, 90, so you could use that. This is the long leg. Long leg divided by square root of 3 gives me short leg. So divide this by square root of 3, and since we're using decimals, it doesn't matter if it's a decimal. But we could also use, let's see, two sides of this angle. One is the hypotenuse. That's this side right here. The other is the adjacent. So we can use cosine because, no, I'm sorry, tangent, because I'm working with the opposite and the adjacent. I'm not actually working with the hypotenuse here. So tangent of 60 equals opposite over adjacent. Cross multiplying gives me x times tangent of 60. I just like to write the x out front. You could write tangent of 60 times x. Just make sure you separate the tangent of 60. It's not like tangent of 60x. It's like tangent of 60 times x. All right, x is still not by itself, so I have to divide by tan 60. Now x is by itself, and it tells me to put 13 divided by tan 60 in my calculator. Remember that a fraction means divided by. So 13 divided by tan 60. And I get a radical, which is a little bit annoying because I want a decimal, so I'm going to change it to a decimal. And I get 7.5. So x equals 7.5. So now, if I'm going to try and use the area formula, I can figure out the whole base because it's 7.5 plus 16. 7.5 plus 16 is 23.5, and the height is 13. So let me come down here. Area equals 1/2 base of the whole triangle times the height. And that's what goes in my calculator to find that area. 0.5, which is what 1/2 is, times 23.5 times 13 gives me 152.75. And that's my answer. So this is a multi-step problem. It's a multi-part problem, but it is doable. You just have to be very careful not to get overwhelmed and just to take it one part at a time. Split the bigger triangle up into two smaller triangles. Start with the one you know more about. So on number 22, I would start with this triangle over here, and I would have to find this right here, which is the height, and then I would have to find this part right over here, which I'll call X, and then my base is this whole thing over here, the whole thing across the bottom, and the height is H. Also, make sure you go to this website and try some practice problems on here. You can get some hints to get your pictures. This is good for angle of elevation and depression, this website right down here. And scroll all the way down for the answers to all of these.